Good evening and welcome to Real Talk, where we sit down with an expert to bring you a little bit of education, a little bit of information, and really try to tackle real issues, real topics, and then offer you real solutions of things that you can apply to your job, to your work, and to the families that you work for in order to benefit everybody. And I'm really excited about tonight's guest. This is someone that I've only recently gotten the opportunity to get to know, but I love her passion. I love her just drive and dedication to really support and help people in our industry and to make a huge difference in what she's doing. So, tonight's guest is Elisa Cesarini, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself, about her background, kind of what she's doing right now, and really the areas where within the in-home childcare industry, she is really working hard to make a significant difference for people. So welcome to Real Talk tonight.
Thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate you having me here tonight. My name is Elisa Cesarini, and I own an agency here in New York City that's located in Chelsea. It's Innovative Youth Care. We are in business since 2014. I started my business after working for retired Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia. I was his nanny for 5 years. And after I finished working with them, I decided to start my own industry or agency. And I started it because of what I saw within the industry that I was working. I was a domestic worker. I was among a number of other women, primarily immigrant women and women of color. So the things that I saw, all of the disparities, and I felt that it was my purpose to create an agency that would, create a shift in this industry. I do work with other agencies here in New York City, only a select few, two, to be very specific, because the larger agencies, I personally feel, are just not meeting the mark when it comes to servicing the candidates as well as the families. It's more centered on the families, and I think there's a huge opportunity for the advocacy within the candidate space, and that's what our agency focuses on. We are committed to making sure that every candidate that works for us is receiving the wages and the rights that they deserve within the homes that we're placing them, because that's our moral responsibility, I feel, as an agency. I'm also a mental health counselor, so I understand the developmental needs of children, and I also understand the developmental, not developmental, the psychological impact that this agency or industry has had on so many women of color and immigrants. And it's concerning. It has been concerning since I started my, business. And even more so now that the wool has kind of been removed from people's eyes and they're looking at things a little bit differently. I think there's a huge opportunity to create an even bigger shift, outside of the clients that I'm talking to every day. We work with a lot of high profile families that are affluent, that believe in the mission and understand why they need to pay fairly on the books, legally, and make sure that the candidate that they're working with has, livelihood within their own home, because a lot of domestic workers are living below the poverty line. And it's a bad situation. So we really like to empower the women we're working with and let them know that we're here to not only help them find work, but to provide a space where they can talk to me. I'm not practicing as a therapist. I use my education and background to support these women for free. It's a free resource. And also parents that don't really understand the industry and don't know where to start. We're a good start. I like to make sure that parents recognize that they can work with any agency that they want. There are tons, as we know. And I just give them the industry standards and tell them what we will and we won't accept for our candidates before they meet them, so that we create that value that they so rightfully deserve. We all know that domestic work is synonymous with the work that was done during slavery. So I'm a huge proponent on making sure that we do our best to shift economic inequality, which is directly related to these industries that are underpaying and underserving those working within them. So I'm a huge advocate in the Black Lives Matter movement. I believe in everything that's happening right now, and I think it's really wonderful to see everybody coming together and recognizing that there is a systemic issue here, and the staffing industry is also it's an industry. So the system, I have personally felt, has never worked. The way agencies are operating is just not serving our families. It's not serving our communities, and our children ultimately suffer when there's caregiver turnover. So our approach is way more personal. We are very serious about the work that we're doing, and all of our clients are very happy. They don't have turnover. Our nannies aren't losing jobs or quitting. They're staying on. And during the pandemic, it's been really wonderful to see how many nannies have not been in horrible situations because they've worked with our agency, and parents that are relieved of the stress of worrying, what are they going to do? Are they going to work or quit if we're not, paying them? And just having this very open, communicative relationship, which I believe is imperative. And most agencies that I work with are on the same page, but the majority of agencies, and I know this through working with so many candidates from New York to LA, are just not representing candidates fairly. And that's been my mission, and I won't stop until hopefully we pass some laws, which is what we're working on now, getting more involved in the government.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you and I talked about when we first met and first connected about this was our passion for both of us, our shared passion for supporting people who are in situations where they're frequently taken advantage of and through no fault of their own. It's based on the history of our industry. It's based on everything that's gone on. I personally worked in New York about 33-ish years ago, somewhere around there. And I was shocked at the number of people, a number of immigrant women in the building that I was working in that were horribly, horribly taken advantage of. And so many of them had children back in their home countries. It was appalling to me at the time. And that was 30 some years ago. And it's still going on today. And we as a company have done many things, mostly kind of more low key, but many things to try and make a difference and try and change those things. But you are right there in the front lines in a city that has, it's not exclusive to New York by any stretch of the imagination, but probably has more of it than some of the other cities. And one of the things we talked about is that a lot of agencies maybe just weren't aware, but there are moral responsibilities that go along with having an agency and things that agencies should be doing for the candidates that they're working with and the families that they're working with to ensure that we are taking these inequalities out of the market, making a difference, making a change. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? And maybe to help agencies who haven't encountered that. Maybe they're in a smaller market. It's just not their reality, but it's something that should be and that they need to be aware
I think it's very important for agencies to understand the cost of living wherever they're placing nannies. It's very simple. We live in a very expensive city. New York City's pricey. So, for example, if a client calls us and needs to hire a nanny, we wouldn't be accepting wages that are significantly lower than what someone could actually live on in New York City. And I think that is the biggest piece, is that agencies should feel empowered and confident that they can have these conversations with parents. And it starts by educating yourself, get the knowledge, understand the statistics, understand that the majority of women of color and immigrants that are working as domestic workers are living below the poverty line. And having these conversations with everybody that calls your agency. And that's what we do when we have to advocate for the salary or the health insurance, or why they're paying on the books and not a portion, or why they're paying more for somebody to live in. There's a lot of conversations I think agencies are hesitant to have, because I understand they need to make money. So, where do we where do we give in, where it's like, all right, we're going to work together, so let's see where we can compromise. Well, for me, there's not a lot of compromising on this end, because this is another human being. And I like to look at it as though I would, if I won't take this job and I wouldn't be able to work in this job, I wouldn't ask another candidate to do that. And you just treat others how you expect to be treated. So with every client, or candidate, we make sure that we understand how much they need to make to provide for their family and discuss their experiences and their education and really get an understanding of who they are. Because I really do care. I mean, I've met incredible women from all different countries and I love them. I mean, it's my family and our community. And I think you, Tanya, and I, we talked about this too, and we really connected because she's been an advocate. You've been an advocate within the newborn care specialist world. And I admire that because there's a lot of things that you knew that I didn't know. And one thing we did agree on is that, yes, sometimes the bigger agencies just kind of they're missing the mark because they are so big, but also helping the candidates understand the terminology and how they're being marketed by the agency. When you're telling a family you have a baby nurse, I only realized until recently that's an illegal term. It's not actually, a term. So a newborn care specialist is the only term to describe somebody who specializes in working with newborns. That's why I've partnered. And, I'm going to be working with you guys and referring all of our nannies that are baby nurses who want to level up and get the qualifications and the credentials that they rightfully deserve. And those should be honored and reflected in their pay. I think that's the biggest disparity, and just explaining that it is your moral responsibility as an agency. It's your moral responsibility because you're putting somebody in the job that they're going to feed their family. So even if you're working for a family that's not easy, helping that candidate understand how to work with that type of personality has been very, very important to me. And I understand that my background has given me these wonderful opportunities, but it wasn't something I planned. It's supposed to be happening this way. And I would just love to see other agencies embodying these same rituals of just, really respecting these women that have been doing this work. I mean, it is the hardest work. It holds our city together. I mean, people running the gamut of New York City wouldn't be able to do it without their nanny and their housekeeper and their butler and their driver and all these individuals that are supporting their family. So that's the conversation. And, again, it's very difficult when you have a lot of agencies and candidates have tons of agencies to choose from, and same with parents. So again, whether, people become your client or not, I think there's a huge opportunity to have a conversation about the importance of paying fairly and why. And I've been in business for 7 years. And yes, in the beginning, it was very difficult. And you have to sacrifice to create something of true value, I believe. And we have created something, and we get referrals, and people are really excited that they're doing things right. And especially given the times, I mean, it shouldn't be like that. And it wasn't like that because I've been in business since 2014. So not every client is like, wow, I see now, this is really bad. No, I mean, people have been on our train, and I'm extremely grateful. And that's why we've kind of kept it small. We've never wanted to be diluted or, saturated. We have to keep the value. But yeah, I mean, I really feel like as it relates to the moral obligations, just think about what's happening in your candidate's home when they go home. Are they struggling to feed their family and they're taking care of yours? It doesn't align with the values or ethos of humanity. And that's where I'm at. Like, I sleep well at night, and I know that you do too, Tanya, because I know that we're changing people's lives and people that matter. Like I said, some of these women are friends of mine. I think they're like family. So it's personal. So when people tell me this is business, not personal, sorry, I'm working in your household. This is very personal. And I've been a member of many business groups in New York, and it's, that's the conversation with a lot of men. And I'm not saying I don't love men, but a lot of men don't see the value because, it's the woman's work that we're evaluating.
Yeah. I love what you said about it's personal and they're like family, because that's how I feel about the people that we work with too. It's personal to me. I want every single student that we work with to be successful, to be paid well for the hard and important work that they do, and that the dedication that they bring to it. The people that are investing in their education, whether they're doing it on their own or whether they're doing it through a company like ours, it doesn't matter. It matters that they're putting in the time and the effort, and they need to be rewarded for that work that they're doing and the effort that they're putting in. And your other point, these are human beings. These are people. And so many times people do get that, oh, it's business, it's not personal, and that mindset, and they kind of like mentally separate and they forget that aspect of it. And that is so critically important. And I think that the times that we are living in, it's always been important, but now it's coming to the forefront, and people are finally waking up and going, yeah, this is a real problem and something needs to be done about it. This has to change. And we, as those who are working in this industry, as educators, as agencies, even as nannies and doulas and newborn care specialists who are kind of viewed as leaders within their community, we have a responsibility to really work towards this. What do you think in terms of like the family dynamics, aside from just talking to them on the phone? What kind of things should agencies be doing? Because what I'm hearing from you is agencies are going to have to take more time. They're going to have to put more effort into educating the families. Is that just at the initial phone call, or is that something that needs to be an ongoing process? What's an agency's obligation there in terms of that?
Well, my agency, I've never based my model off of any other agency because I'm an entrepreneur and I feel like I've created a solution to a very big problem, which is parents cannot find trustworthy childcare. Whether it's sustainable, whether they want to avoid turnover, where the people might just not be qualified. And we've really created a space where families can trust us because we know our candidates personally, like I said, and that takes a lot of time and investment. And we do a lot of free events where they're just able to engage with one another. And I offer my counseling and supportive services to them where they can share what they might be going through or share what they might need help on. What you just said is very important. I mean, I think that agencies just need to spend more time, and the fees that we're collecting are big. So I don't think it's not justifiable. Like I can't even imagine what else I would be doing with my time because my clients it's an ongoing process. I work with a lot of new and expecting parents and parents who have never done this before. And I tell them the truth about what their options will be. And I encourage families to call other agencies because I'm confident in the work that we're doing. And I think all agencies should feel that way. You know, like if you can't say that, then there might be an opportunity for you to dig deep into why you're not feeling that way. And I think the reason we do is because we know we're being honest. And when you're operating from a place of integrity and it's unwavering, there's really no question. I don't look behind my back. I don't worry if, a high profile person is going to tell me this person, did this, this, and this. I'm not, because I just know. I know the individuals I'm working with, the trust that they have with me and our agency translates into the trust that's facilitated within their home and the relationships that have been sustained over the years. I mean, we have a 97% turnover rate that's unheard of, and our guarantee is for a year. It's also unheard of because, again, going back to the moral responsibility, we make money, and to justify that, we need to be educating parents on, what turnover looks like and how it happens, instead of placing people that we know are going to turn over just to make the money. And most guarantees are 3 months long for agencies. So it's a trap, really. And it's not working. And if I could give any agency advice, I would say educate yourself on how you are contributing to the problem, which I'll be very frank, the most important problem in this country right now is systemic racism, and staffing agencies are contributing to that. I mean, there are many staffing agencies that were operating during slavery times in the country, and they're still in business. So I think it could be of value for those agencies to maybe make a public statement and actually do the work about how they're going to change their practices, because it's evident that they're not, because we meet these candidates, and some of these candidates that are being placed are telling us horrible stories, and it goes right back to the same agencies in New York City. And I'm not going to drop names because that's not not my purpose here. My purpose is to hopefully give people that enlightenment that it's possible. We make money. I provide for my family, and my candidates are also making money providing for their families, but they're not living below the poverty line. So by doing that, we are helping create a shift in that systemic racism because, like we said, most of these women don't look like you and I, Tanya.
Right. So I want to shift this just a little bit and say, let's talk to the candidates for a minute here. What would you tell candidates if they're evaluating agency? So, a lot of the people who watch our show are not necessarily in the New York City area. They may not, be looking for a job, but they're going to look to the agencies in their area. What are the things that they should be looking for, or what are the questions that they should be asking agencies to feel like they're going to be well represented by them, particularly if they are Black women or women of color and and men even. And we need to look at the whole gamut. What questions should they be asking to know that they're going to be well represented?
I mean, I would be asking the agency making sure that your resume is considered and reflecting your qualifications, and asking the agency how they determine, how one gets paid. And typically, we all know it's the families that will make an offer, and then you match candidates based off of what a family might be offering. So I think it's important for you as a candidate to understand the type of clients that an agency might be working with. Speak with them about the types of jobs they might be getting. Are these jobs that you could, maintain and be able to commit to? Because a lot of agencies differ. Some agencies are not working at the level you might be at this point. I mean, you might be a candidate that's making over $100,000 a year, or you might be a candidate that deserves to be making $100,000 a year, but you are not. So you're wondering why. I don't understand. I have 13 years experience. I have a college degree, or I have a nursing degree from Barbados, or whatever it might be. I mean, our agency loves that. I mean, and that's how we represent you. So I think it's more along like asking the agencies, because agencies are not, typically they're not that communicative where they would be supporting the candidate in the sense that they support candidates, but it's more like, this is the job, this is what we have. Are you interested or not? We're more like, tell us what you've done, tell us your qualifications, what's your dream job, what would that look like, how can we support you and your family in the placement that we make, and how long can you commit? Then we divert back to what jobs we have. So we don't put people in positions that they're not going to want to stay in. So I think candidates should really just do your research. If you have a friend that might have worked with an agency, maybe find out what their experience was like. Ask the agency what their turnover rate is. Ask an agency what their guarantee is. What's the guarantee when you place me? Because that's very telling. I mean, I've had nannies call me and say, the agency is forcing me to stay here because it's a 3-month guarantee, but this family is treating me unfairly. And that, we could go on about all the ways that's done. Right. I also think it's important for you to stand your ground on what you know. For example, if you're offered a position through an agency that you've already committed to, and they're telling you, well, for example, the live-in situation is a huge conversation right now. That is a benefit to your employer, and you should be paid more if you're living in. It's never changed for us. I've never felt that if someone lives in their home, they should be getting paid less, because you're also maintaining your own home outside of your job. And I think just that right there is important to get into the habit of saying when parents are telling you, or maybe if you're finding a job on Facebook and a mom's like, wait, I'm giving you free room and board, you could confidently turn around and say, well, that's not free room and board. That is an expectation within the job description that I'm willing to commit to for the pay that you're going to be giving me. It's a job. And a lot of times, and a lot of, agencies will, ignore that and instead want to work with the client. Maybe it's a high profile person. They really want the client and they're not willing to pay additional. Well, we really don't care who it is, because that's the point. It's like, I'm not going to do that. And I don't care who you are. Working for you is not a benefit either. I think there's a lot of agencies that'll just let people think that. And I actually spoke to somebody yesterday, and he was like, we just moved into this huge mansion in Greenwich. It's amazing. It has a pool. It has a tennis court, and it's 7 days live-in for the next 7 months. They can't leave. And I was like, okay, well, you need to pay, for the service, And he was just like, well, it's such a nice house. I just figured like you wouldn't pay additional for the room and board. And I was like, I understand you're an expecting parent. You've never hired before, but that's not a benefit to somebody. They're working in your home. I mean, is anybody going to be that comfortable to go do the backstroke in your pool every day? I mean, the reality is having these real conversations with the families. If you're the one that's negotiating, or if an agency is, you should still talk to the agency about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do before they start placing you in jobs, and telling them what, your expectations are, because the more confident you are, the more respect you'll get in this life. And if there are agencies that don't respect your confidence, that is not the agency for you. Because I love working with confident individuals. That makes me feel secure. It makes my clients feel secure. These are individuals caring for your children. They're educated. They know their value. When you're oppressed and you don't feel the way you should feel on the job, and you're working with children, we know what that looks like. It happens in daycares, happens all over. People are not happy. And this is what we want. All candidates, there's a possibility you can be happy working in this industry. You just need to find the right people that'll work with you and advocate for you, or you could advocate for yourself, because that is my biggest dream, is that agencies don't really need to be in business. If there was an overarching respect for, human beings, we wouldn't have to be a middleman. This would be done organically. But that's not the reality of the times right now. And I would just, that's where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just had a conversation yesterday with an agency that got a resume from a candidate, and they had some incorrect terminology on that. And she said, what do you think about this? And she said, I'm thinking about just telling this person, forget it. I don't want to work with you. You don't even understand the terminology or certification. I was like, no, back it up. This is somebody who came from a different country, and they don't necessarily understand you. If you just throw this candidate out because of that, you just missed out on a potentially fantastic candidate to work with. Why not take the opportunity to educate this person who just applied with you, and share with them why the term baby nurse isn't okay, and why there is, the certification that she has listed is actually not a legitimate certification. Explain to her what a legitimate certification is, because look at this person's experience. I'm like, this is an A number one candidate with just a little bit of effort on your part. And her response, thank goodness, was, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. Thank you for saying that to me. You've just totally shifted my mindset about this candidate. And she's like, I am going to handle all future candidates differently. Oh my gosh, I never. And so I think a lot of people just need to be made aware of this. The candidates need to be made aware that they need to advocate for themselves, like this particular candidate did, because she advocated for herself in there. But it's also the agencies that need to have that shift in mindset and really take, I can't tell you how happy it made me to hear you say, take the time to really do this and to really educate families, to work with the candidates, get to know them, because there are so many fantastic people out there. And this whole job could be a whole lot easier if agencies were advocating more for their candidates, and if candidates were advocating more for themselves. And
I think that's, I think that a lot of parents are starting to see like how, the old school staffing agencies are just they're not serving our communities. And there are incredible candidates out there that deserve better representation. I mean, some of the best women I've ever met have no resumes, none. I mean, because they're so good, they just get passed around to people. And sometimes they're getting passed around and getting paid better and better each time, but that's not the norm all the time. Sometimes we meet women, like you said, that are immigrants. Sometimes there's a language barrier, and they weren't able to say, hey, I've been passed to 6 families for the past 6 years, and I'm still making $15 an hour. And
Right.
like that's where parents who are doing the hiring on their own need to say to themselves, okay, $15 an hour, we all know that's impossible to live on
Mhm.
in New York City. Like how do you sleep at night?
Yeah,
You
that's
really got
impossible to live on in almost any metropolitan area in this country now. I mean, I live in an area where we have a much lower cost of living, even though we're a very large city, and you can't live on $15 an hour here, not unless you have two roommates. Um,
yeah, and it's the norm for people to not pay on the books. Nobody pays on the books, everybody pays cash. And that's where the advocacy we need the most is candidates standing up and saying, no, I won't be
right,
paid off the book. No, I
absolutely.
won't accept less than this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this current pandemic has certainly brought that right to the surface in showing us that, even if you're paid cash, you can still file for unemployment if you're out of work.
Mhm.
It takes a little bit longer, but the families are learning really quickly too. And I hope that that is something that just makes a huge turnaround in our industry. That families are realizing it's not good for the candidate and it's also not good for them. There are lots of ways, and we
Exactly.
actually have a couple of real talks that are on that particular topic from Homework Solutions, where they have provided tons of educational information.
Yes.
Um, is there anything else that you wanted to share tonight? Anything else that you felt passionate about and wanted to make sure that gets shared tonight?
Um, I mean, I've shared a lot. I feel like as an entrepreneur, anything's possible. I think I can speak to, I mean, I've met thousands of families and I've met thousands of candidates, and I know this is possible. And I know it's hard in the beginning to make a sacrifice. And as a white woman, when I made my sacrifice, I had my mom and my dad to help me when I couldn't pay the rent, to create this business. And I know that's not the situation for a lot of these candidates, which is why, like you said, it's so important for parents to understand. Like, if you're in a position to hire, I mean, just do the right thing. And my parents are immigrants. My father's from Italy. So his experience, I learned a lot from that too. I saw how hard it was. And he was a man,
Mhm.
who was mocked by people because he didn't know the language. And that stayed with me as a child, seeing what he went through and the adversity in this country in New York City. Um, and that's what women are still going through. A lot of these immigrant women and women of color. And it's just at this point, and having parents that lived through the civil rights movement in New York, and family that lived through the depression in New York, and everybody in that space of, advocacy. Um, I do believe I've seen it. It's generational. Like, and I feel like when you can break generational curses, I mean, we can break these curses for all the wealthy people and affluent people that are hiring household staff. Like, you don't have to do it how your parents did it. Like, it's
Mhm.
not, the old way is not working. We need to just band together and make the sacrifice. And whether it's a sacrifice of your ego and listening to a woman owned agency and saying, all right, she's right, we really need to start paying on the books, or upping the salary, or only working 50 hours a week, not expecting 60 to 80 hours a week. I mean, the burnout is, an important conversation. I think that, and you guys have covered that on a real talk before,
Mhm.
but most importantly, yeah, I mean, I just feel like take the chance. And for nannies, take the chance, say what you mean in an interview, and speak your truth. I mean, you speak your truth. Who can deny the truth? Like, you have a family at home, I need to provide, I can't live on that. Say the
Mhm.
truth. I cannot live on that. I cannot take a job off the books because look what just happened in the pandemic.
Mhm.
People had no support system, no social security, unemployment. But even that's a long term, no social security. I mean, this is how we're systematically impacting the lives of human beings negatively and keeping them down. And that is what I refuse to contribute to doing. That's why, if a parent isn't willing, I can't work with them. And if a candidate, you know, I mean, I pretty much work with most candidates because they're all referred to me. But yeah, I mean, I don't discriminate. I mean, I love working with people. So, but when it comes to people that can afford to pay for childcare, I'm a little less flexible,
Mhm.
if you will. And I work with families that are upper middle class or middle class that will bust their butt to make it work and make sure that their candidate is being paid fairly. So there's really no excuse for those that are running the gamut of our city. And I'm happy and grateful for all of my clients. And if they see this, yeah, those are individuals that are on the train of real activism in the space and knowing like this is a piece to the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. If you have any information or any other resources or things that you want to share, we'll include those in the feed. If those of you who are watching this either live or on replay have questions for Elisa, please put them in the feed. You can tag her, you can tag Newborn Care Solutions, and if a question gets missed, we'll make sure that it gets to her so that it can get answered. You will also be able to find her bio and her business contact information in the feed if you want to get a hold of her about representing you as an agency or as a family, or as you're a family that's looking for someone or a candidate who's looking for a position. So you'll be able to reach her. And also, I would venture to say, if you're an agency that says, you know what, this really struck a chord with me tonight, and I'm not quite sure where to go, but I want to do this better, I'm willing to bet that Elisa would be willing to talk to you via an email or whatever to help you get started on making a real difference in your community, of serving all of your candidates and all of the families in a legal and fair way, and really making a difference in the lives of the people. We know that most people who get into this industry as agencies and most people who get into it as caregivers do it because they're passionate about supporting families, about supporting children. They want to make a difference. And this is an opportunity to learn more about how differences can be made. So thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you sharing your passion and your expertise in this area. And to all of you who are watching, thank you for joining us on Real Talk. We're here on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about real issues and real topics and try to offer real solutions that can really make a difference. So everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining us.